A little girl collapsed in the bright afternoon sunlight outside one of the city's most prestigious children's hospitals, and within seconds doctors were shouting that she would not survive unless they found a rare blood donor immediately. Luxury cars screeched to a halt, cameras gathered around the entrance because the child was the only daughter of one of the country's most powerful CEOs, and panic spread through the crowd. Then, from the edge of the sidewalk, a tired single father wearing faded work clothes quietly stepped forward. Nobody recognized him. Nobody thanked him. Only a few hours earlier, the child's mother had looked him in the eyes, laughed at his worn jacket, and treated him as if he were invisible. She had no idea that the very man she had mocked was about to become the reason her daughter would live. If you believe kindness is never wasted, forgiveness changes lives, hope is stronger than pride, and everyone deserves a second chance, please like, comment, share this story, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps our community continue sharing stories that remind us humanity still matters. Graham Mercer had spent the last 6 years raising his 8-year-old daughter, Clara, alone after losing his wife to a sudden illness. Every morning was a carefully balanced routine filled with homemade lunches, school drop-offs, construction jobs, grocery budgeting, and bedtime promises that tomorrow would somehow be easier. He never complained because Clara smiled often enough to make every sacrifice feel worthwhile. Although money was always tight, Graham believed wealth was measured by the people who waited for you to come home, not by the size of the house waiting for you. That same sunny morning, Graham visited the headquarters of Sterling Biotech, hoping to secure a maintenance contract for the small repair company where he worked. Winning the contract would mean steady income, health insurance, and finally replacing Clara's broken bicycle. He wore his cleanest shirt, though its collar had faded from years of washing. His boots were polished until they almost looked new. He rehearsed his presentation while sitting in the lobby, hoping someone would simply give him a chance. The company's CEO, Vivian Holloway, arrived surrounded by executives, assistants, photographers, and investors. She was admired across the business world for transforming a struggling pharmaceutical company into a billion-dollar empire before turning 40. Her discipline was legendary, but success had quietly built walls around her heart. She had learned to judge people within seconds because she believed efficiency required quick decisions. Unfortunately, quick decisions often ignored invisible truths. As Vivian crossed the marble lobby, she noticed Graham standing near the reception desk holding a worn folder. She assumed he was another unqualified contractor hoping for charity instead of opportunity. Without stopping, she made a dismissive remark loud enough for nearby executives to hear, suggesting that serious companies should hire professionals rather than desperate people pretending to be businessmen. Several people laughed politely, eager to please their powerful boss. Graham felt every word like a stone against his chest. Years earlier he might have answered with anger, but fatherhood had taught him that dignity sometimes meant walking away instead of fighting back. He quietly thanked the receptionist for her time, tucked his folder under his arm, and left the building without looking behind him. The humiliation stayed with him during the bus ride across town, yet he refused to carry bitterness home to Clara. He stopped at a bakery and spent the last few dollars in his wallet on her favorite cinnamon roll because he knew she had a spelling test that afternoon and loved celebrating even the smallest victories. Meanwhile, Vivian's day unraveled unexpectedly. Her 10-year-old daughter, Elsie, had been visiting the company's community health event outside the children's hospital nearby. During the event, Elsie suddenly collapsed because of a hidden medical condition no one knew she had inherited. Within minutes she was rushed inside while doctors desperately searched for compatible blood. Her rare blood type left almost no margin for delay. Vivian arrived in complete panic. The confident executive disappeared, replaced by a terrified mother whose expensive suit and impressive title meant absolutely nothing inside an emergency room. She begged doctors to save her child, but medicine could not create blood that wasn't available. The hospital announced an urgent appeal to everyone nearby. Volunteers lined up immediately, but one by one their blood types failed to match. Time slipped away with frightening speed. Graham had been walking past the hospital after finishing another small repair job when he heard the announcement echoing through loudspeakers. Without hesitation, he stepped inside. He wasn't thinking about the frightened mother. He wasn't thinking about the insult from earlier. He only imagined his own daughter lying in that hospital bed and prayed someone would help her without asking who she was. Tests revealed something extraordinary. Graham's blood was not only compatible but an exceptionally close match that would allow doctors to begin treatment immediately. He signed every document without asking whose child he was helping. While the transfusion proceeded, Graham sat quietly in a recovery chair drinking water as instructed by the nurses. He expected to leave unnoticed once the doctors confirmed the child was stable. Fate had different plans. Vivian rushed into the donor recovery area after learning that a volunteer had saved her daughter's life. She intended to thank the stranger personally, but the moment she saw Graham sitting there with a bandage on his arm, the color drained from her face. She recognized the faded jacket, she recognized the gentle eyes she had dismissed only hours before. For several long seconds she could not move. The realization struck harder than any business failure she had ever experienced. The man she had mocked, judged, and humiliated had never paused to repay cruelty with cruelty. Instead, he had offered the one gift no amount of money could buy. Shame settled heavily over her heart. Graham stood to leave, believing the moment required no words. He had done what anyone should do. Vivian stopped him, her composure completely broken. Tears replaced authority as she admitted she had been wrong in ways no apology could fully repair. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to admit that success had slowly convinced her appearances revealed character when, in reality, they often hid extraordinary courage. Graham accepted her apology with quiet grace. He explained that holding onto resentment would never make Clara's future brighter. His daughter needed a father who taught forgiveness instead of revenge. Those words lingered with Vivian long after Graham walked away. Over the following weeks, Elsie recovered steadily. She often asked about the kind man who had saved her. Vivian realized she could not simply send flowers or a generous check and believe her debt had been repaid. Graham had restored more than her daughter's health. He had forced her to confront the person she had become. Determined to change, she investigated the maintenance proposal Graham had carried that morning. Instead of discovering an amateur, she found years of excellent work, glowing recommendations, and a reputation for honesty that many large corporations would envy. Her own prejudice had prevented her from seeing genuine quality. Rather than quietly awarding his company the contract out of guilt, Vivian insisted the proposal go through the standard evaluation process with an independent committee. It ranked first on merit alone. When Graham learned his company had won, he smiled because he knew the opportunity had been earned honestly. The contract transformed the small business. Employees who had worried about layoffs suddenly enjoyed stable work. New apprentices were hired. Families who depended on those paychecks found renewed security. Graham was promoted to operations manager because his integrity had inspired confidence throughout the company. Still, the greatest change occurred inside Vivian. She began spending more time visiting employees instead of hiding behind conference rooms. She removed unnecessary executive privileges that separated leadership from staff. She introduced anonymous hiring reviews to reduce bias. Every major decision now included one simple question: were they judging people by appearances or by character? The culture of Sterling Biotech slowly changed. Months later, the company hosted a daytime community appreciation event at the same hospital where Elsie's life had been saved. This time there were no cameras focused on prestige or publicity. Instead, local families, hospital workers, volunteers, and employees gathered to celebrate everyday acts of kindness. Vivian invited Graham and Clara as honored guests. Clara, now proudly riding the new bicycle her father had finally been able to buy, spent the afternoon laughing with Elsie. The two girls became close friends despite growing up in completely different worlds. Children, unlike many adults, rarely measured people by income or status. Watching them together, Graham realized that kindness had created a future no amount of anger could have achieved. During the ceremony, Vivian shared a deeply personal reflection. She admitted that the most important lesson of her career had not come from investors, universities, or boardrooms. It had come from a humble father who chose compassion over pride at the very moment he had every reason to walk away. The audience stood in heartfelt applause, but Graham looked embarrassed by the attention. He believed heroes were ordinary people who simply refused to let someone else suffer. As the bright afternoon sun filled the hospital courtyard, Elsie presented Graham with a handmade drawing. It showed two hands reaching toward each other beneath a shining sky. At the bottom she had written that real strength was helping someone even after they had hurt you. Graham folded the drawing carefully and placed it inside his wallet beside the only photograph of his late wife. He knew both belonged close to his heart because they represented the same lesson: love becomes meaningful only when it survives pain. Vivian never forgot that afternoon. Whenever she interviewed new employees or met struggling entrepreneurs, she reminded herself that the next extraordinary person might arrive wearing worn boots instead of polished shoes. Character could never be measured by clothing, titles, or first impressions. Years later, Sterling Biotech became known not only for innovation but also for treating every applicant with dignity. The policy that changed everything carried no complicated business language. It simply reminded every employee that respect should always come before judgment. Before we reach the end of this journey, leave a meaningful comment and tell us this: have you ever experienced a moment when someone's kindness completely changed your opinion of them, or have you forgiven someone who never expected your forgiveness? If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. As Graham and Clara walked home beneath the warm afternoon sun, neither of them talked about wealth, powerful companies, or life-changing contracts. They simply held hands, grateful that one compassionate decision had saved a little girl's life, healed a mother's broken heart, restored a father's dignity, and reminded everyone who witnessed their story that the greatest people in the world are often the ones society overlooks first. In the end, forgiveness accomplished what pride never could, proving that kindness given without expecting anything in return has the quiet power to transform not only one life, but countless others.